This tutorial will summarize the Scrum framework in 10 minutes. In addition to reviewing all the important Scrum concepts, such as Scrum meetings and artifacts, this tutorial will give you an overview of how it all works together. For the purposes of this tutorial, let's pretend that we are working on a product. Let's assume that there is already a clear vision as well as funding for this product. With the funding in place, there are people who have a stake in this product, be it investors, partners, or internal executives. We see them all as stakeholders. The product requirements wish list that come to us from stakeholders is collected and managed by one person in Scrum, the product owner. The product owner manages the product requirements that come from all the various sources, be it business stakeholders or technical product requirements. The product owner's job is to collect the requirements and prioritize them based on the business value. Now, where does he store all these requirements? All product requirements are stored as features and user stories in a product backlog. The product owner's job is to keep the backlog up to date by prioritizing and reprioritizing requirements on an ongoing basis. Requirements in the product backlog should be prioritized in the order of business value. Wait a second, what are user stories and features? User stories are simply a high-level description of what is needed from the perspective of the user of that new capability. It contains just enough information to allow the team to, number one, validate their understanding of the request with the product owner, and number two, estimate the work as a team. Features are generally large user stories that take more than a sprint or two to develop, and thus are broken down into smaller user stories. Now we've heard about the requirements and a couple of Scrum roles, the product owner and stakeholders. Before we deep dive into the execution of the requirements, let's review the remaining key roles in Scrum. Scrum Master, the role that bears the name of Scrum, ensures that the team follows the rules of Scrum. The Scrum Master removes impediments for the team to be able to solely focus on their work. The Scrum Master's job is to work with the team on continuously improving their performance as a team. Scrum Masters keep team's performance visible to the team by monitoring team's progress and facilitating Scrum meetings. Now, the essential role of Scrum, the Scrum team. The Scrum team is a cross-functional team of developers, UX, and QA. The team is responsible for the execution and the quality of the work. Thus, they are the ones to estimate the work required for a user story, and they are the ones who commit to getting the work done within a specific time period or a sprint. So again, the key roles in Scrum are the Scrum team, the Scrum Master, the product owner, and stakeholders. Now that we have learned about the key roles in Scrum, let's see how these roles work together. Earlier we talked about the journey of product requirements from stakeholders to the product owner into the product backlog. What happens to the requirements once they've been written as features and user stories and prioritized by the product owner in the product backlog? User stories are refined by the product owner with the team in preparation for sprint planning. During this user story refinement period, the team gets to ask clarifying questions and validate with the product owner what the definition of done is for a user story. Sprint in the Scrum framework is the time period during which the Scrum team executes the product requirements, the user stories. Sprints typically range from 1 to 4 weeks. Once a team and the organizations have decided how long a sprint should be, that length of time is kept unless the team is able to reduce the time and deliver a workable product increment within a shorter time frame. Some organizations that practice Scrum bundle few sprints into a release. For example, a release might have 3 iterations, 3 sprints, while at the end of a sprint, a team delivers a shippable product or product increment. Every 3 sprints, for example, there could be a major release. It is up to each organization to decide the length of their sprint and the length of the release cycle, if any. Once user stories have been prioritized and refined at a high level for the upcoming sprint planning meeting, they are ready. Sprint planning meeting typically takes place on the last day of the previous sprint, in conjunction with the sprint review and the retrospective of the sprint that ended. During sprint planning meeting, the team reviews all the user stories in their sprint backlog with the product owner. Based on team's velocity, that is, based on the historical data trends on how many points per sprint this team was able to accomplish in the past, the team commits to deliver a specific number of points in the upcoming sprint. Should priorities change during the sprint, the product owner is responsible for reprioritizing the product backlog within the committed number of team's velocity points. With the sprint planning behind them, the team can now start the sprint. Then, once a user story owner finished the work for the user story, he reviews the work with the product owner, who then validates that the acceptance criteria has indeed been met, and the product owner accepts the stories as completed. At the end of the sprint, the team reflects back to determine what they can do better in the future sprints. Any requirements that come out of the retro meeting also go into the product backlog and are prioritized by the product owner. But wait a minute, you might think. Who keeps an eye on the project and makes sure that the work is on track to be delivered on schedule? How are interrupts addressed and issues detected? Unlike in waterfall projects, where there is a project manager managing the project as a whole, in Scrum, all the roles have their own responsibilities in making sure that the committed requirements are delivered as planned during sprint planning meeting. In Scrum, there's a daily stand-up meeting every 24 hours, during which the team ought to bring up any issues that need to be addressed. If the team cannot resolve the issues themselves, the Scrum Master is responsible to find someone who can help the team. During the daily stand-up meeting, the team also talks about what they've accomplished the previous day and what they are planning to accomplish that upcoming day. The Scrum Master also reviews the Burndown chart with the team and tracks the completion of user story points. If a team commits to a certain number of points to complete during a given sprint, as they complete user stories, the total number of points should be decreasing, and that decrease in work scope is captured in the Burndown chart. So every 24 hours, there's a chance to validate that the sprint is on track, and after every sprint, there's a chance to course correct and validate that the larger release is on track as well. With that, we've reviewed all the key Scrum framework concepts: the key meetings, sprint planning, daily stand-up meeting, sprint retrospective, and review. The key Scrum artifacts: velocity, product and sprint backlog, burndown or burn-up chart, user stories, and features. The key Scrum roles: product owner, Scrum Master, the team, and stakeholders. And the iterations that are relevant in Scrum: sprint and release. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have questions about Scrum or would like more information, please check out my full course offering or simply email me.